any locations on this company. We are ready to get started. Welcome. My name is Mary. I am a corporate partnership manager for Genesis Works Bay Area. Welcome to the Future of Opportunity, and thank you so much for being here tonight. Let's give yourselves a round of applause for coming out. It's really hard to do things after work, I understand. Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited for our program tonight. We are going to get started by hearing from our Chief Executive Officer of Genesis Works, Byron B. Garrett.
Well, good evening. You got to utilize your outdoor voice. Good evening.
Good evening.
No, you got to do better than that. I'm a former school principal. Good evening. Good evening. There we go. It's good to see each and every one of your smiling faces, parcels and spaces, dentures and braces on a day like today. I live in the D.C. area, and I certainly want to extend a significant thank you to each of you for coming out this evening. I understand you're experiencing what you consider to be a heat wave. Having lived in Arizona for a decade, I would slightly disagree. But I will tell you, I did escape tornadoes in DC in order to be here. So I think there's something going on in climate that is actually real, whether you believe it or not, depending on where you are in the world. But more importantly, I'm so excited that you've gathered tonight for this great program and conversation. I've been CEO now for about 5 months, and this notion of how do we expand this opportunity and make it available to every single young person that needs it across this country. Obviously, today we're talking about the Bay, but in case you don't know, we also operate in 8 other communities across the U.S., with us starting in Nashville this spring. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention one of our great alums, who's also my boss, one of our national board members, Michelle, who's here this evening. Give her a huge hand. She does come out for events on a regular basis. And I want to thank Nada and the entire team for having the vision to figure out how do we bring folks together for this meaningful conversation. There's not a week that goes by that I'm not on the road having discussions with folks around how do we prepare the talent not only for today, but literally for tomorrow. And so every single conversation we have and every single opportunity we're able to make available, we recognize, realize, and understand that we're going to be in a position and be a better country and a better society because we have young people that can contribute in such a meaningful way. And I know some of us think, what can a 17-year-old really do? Well, there are many alums that are scattered tonight. Raise your hand so people see who you are. You can have real live conversations and understand the value of their work and what they commit, and more importantly, how this program has created a whole different trajectory for them. And so to each of you that's also a corporate partner or a philanthropic partner, thank you for the ongoing support. I'll tell you that we need more, and you will see me in my commitment to Nada was, I'll be in the marketplace more, because I want to ensure that we bring more people to the table to create this opportunity for a host of folks. I'll leave you with this one thought that I tell people no matter where I go. Isn't it strange how princes and kings and clowns who caper in sawdust rings and common folk like you and me are builders for eternity? For each is given a bag of tools, a shapeless mass, a set of rules, and each of us as life is flown must either build a stumbling block or a stepping stone. So thank you for walking along this journey with us as we work every single day and every single hour of the day to ensure that young people have the right career pathway and that it truly is a stepping stone as opposed to a stumbling block or an obstacle. So thank you so much for coming out this evening, and we greatly appreciate your support.
Thank you very much, Byron. We're so excited to have you here. And now I am thrilled to welcome our Future of Opportunity panelists. We'll start with our moderator for the night, Katherine, the COO of Maverick Ventures. We have Jesse Rothstein, Professor of Public Policy and Economics from UC Berkeley. We also have Ron Smith, the VP of Education from Salesforce. Last but not least, Mike Hamilton, CIO of Cloudflare and Let's give one more big round of applause for our panelists tonight. They are doing this of their own willingness to bring more attention to the work that we're doing here at Genesis Works. And I'm really, really excited for their conversation. I'm really hard on it. All right.
welcome you all again to the Future of Opportunity. And I'm not going to take the time to reintroduce our panelists, but I just want to start by saying that the next 10 years are going to redefine the workforce more profoundly than any decade before it. AI will absolutely be a part of that story, but it's not the entire story. How we train talent, how companies respond to uncertainty, how inequality widens or narrows, and how cross-sector partnerships function will matter just as much. Tonight is not about predicting the future. It's about what leaders need to anticipate now and what choices we make today that are going to shape the future workforce that depends on these choices that we make. One thing that we want to challenge up front as part of our narrative tonight is that the idea that AI is eliminating entry-level jobs. And our panelists are going to argue what's happening is a reframing of early career development and building resilient, inclusive pipelines that are a process that's no longer optional, but imperative. And actually a competitive advantage that we can integrate into the training that we have for the Genesis Works cohort. So I'm going to start by directing a question at you, Mike, CIO of Cloudflare. And so I want to ask you, so as part of your responsibility on making AI work in real time and not in theory, from your seat, what entry-level or middle-skill roles are changing today because of AI? And how are humans becoming more essential rather than less essential as part of the workforce?
Totally, great question. And Cloudflare is doing a 1,000 intern program this year because we actually believe that the youth is already AI native. They came out that way. My kids are actually a pretty good illustration of this. My daughter's 18, she does not go to AI right away. My son is 15 and a half, he uses AI for everything, including making a video of my corgi getting into a fireplace. Okay, like it's everything, but it's pretty natural. The way that technology moves is usually in like 3 to 5 year cycles of disruption. So I've been in IT for a long time. It usually takes 3 to 5 years. It's more like 3 to 5 weeks right now. If you're the bleeding edge of AI, it's very, very fast. Which means that if you over-calibrate to any one point in time, if you were to take a picture of that moment in time and try to freeze it, you're calibrating toward the wrong thing, right? Because it's like the technology is evolving, it's evolving really fast. But let me talk to you for a second about what it's changing and what it's getting to. Why did we bring technology into companies in the first place? I want you to rewind in your minds for a second, theater of the mind here, and go back to the 1970s when there's two business leaders talking, and one of them goes like, you know, that other company over there bought this thing, it's called a computer. And they're going like, man, I heard about that. We probably should get us one of those. And so they get one and it comes into the business and they're like, cool, when does it do something? Like, and while it's kind of a funny anecdotal story, it's legitimately true. That business and technology did not evolve together naturally. It required people like me to help facilitate that. So the path then from intent, I want to get business value, I want to do something for the company, to outcome was filled with people like me. Like, you've got to have bunches of people in the middle to bridge this gap. What AI is actually doing is shortening that gap considerably. The distance between intent and outcome is short. It's getting shorter all the time, and it means you don't need to be as technical to do it. But the skill I value, the skill I'm looking for right now is, can you solve a problem? Can you listen to someone else? So like, I had to learn languages in my job, and I don't mean Japanese, Chinese, German, you know, whatever. I had to learn like finance language. What does revenue recognition mean? HR language. What does hire to retire mean? There's a bunch of different things I had to learn as a technologist. And that's what I need people that can do. The younger people are naturally doing that. They're just like, they have a lot of questions, and questions are what we want because AI is good at answering questions. So the dynamic changes, but it's just not in the same ways. And I'll leave you with one closing thought. If you reduce the cost of developing code by substantial margins, the demand for code does not go down, it goes up. And if you reduce the barrier of writing code from days and months to minutes, solving problems becomes the new thing.
So let's push this a little bit further. If you were designing entry-level roles from scratch today, with AI assumed and not optional, what skills would matter most and what traditional expectations would you eliminate? And maybe Ron, I'll direct this question to you.
So when you're thinking about the skills of today, I have this conversation a lot, especially for young people. They already have the talent. We're not having to give them something new. We're not having to look at it as a world that's changing for them. We're actually adding tools that they already have. We're enhancing the tools. One of the things is we're in a space and time where AI is changing and faster than any other time in technology. So let me just take you back. In 1997, I was in my teacher's program, and they came up with this thing, and they said, we need you to create for one of your classes an email. I said, what is an email? A decade after that, they came up with the iPhone. And it went from, there's a picture of the Vatican where everyone's holding a camel, next year everyone's holding up an iPhone. And change and evolution is just part of the workforce structure. So when you're thinking about the skills, you're thinking about how are we retooling, how are we reskilling, how are we bringing what these young people have? Because they're not technology, they don't have technology fear. What they have is the skill already, and we just want to give them more. And it's different because when you think about an 18-year-old versus a 38-year-old, they may have been in a job for a couple of decades, they might have done these things, and we're thinking, how can we give you different tools? And there actually is a benefit to businesses. Businesses can say, oh, so we have two young people who are just giving tools who are not afraid of technology. How can we build those skills up and enhance them? And it really is about enhancing skills and tools, and not changing them. And so in the workforce, I think you hit on something else. It's communication, collaboration, conversation, using those tools now in conjunction with them. And that's what's missing in the conversation today. Everybody's saying we need technology. True. Everybody's saying we need all these different access points and enable the use of AI. 100% true. But then if you forget some of the other just key factors, you'll lose them in students. And then people, as they go into the workforce, will be missing out on career opportunities.
So Jesse, what does this mean for job readiness, and what does the data actually say?
So I think that, is this on?
I think it's on. One more.
Is this working? No. Okay. Okay, this one works. Okay, so I think the traditional role for an economist in this panel is the brain on the parade, and so I think that's my job today. I think that when new technologies come out, they gradually affect the labor market. When the personal computer came out, it was something like 30 years until you could start to see it in how the labor market worked, as Mike was saying. AI is going to move faster than that, but it's not going to move that much faster than that in terms of how it reshapes the labor market. The labor market gets reshaped not when individual jobs start to move some of their tasks to a different technology. It gets reshaped when whole companies start to rebuild themselves around the new technology. And that's going to take a while. So I think in terms of the question about how we're seeing it in the data so far, we're really not seeing it in the data so far. There's if you look really hard at the tea leaves right now, you can see maybe that in a couple of sectors, there's been a little bit less hiring of entry-level people in the last year. But I think that's probably just that's what happens when the labor market is turning down more generally, that those are sectors that tend to hire less, and you see it more at the entry level. I think it's really hard to convince yourself that there's much evidence yet of an AI impact on the labor market. It's something we need to track, because there will be one, but it's not there yet. And so one of the things we're doing at the lab I run is building a tracker to use real-time data from unemployment insurance claims to be able to see, are AI affected sectors? Are we starting to see more claims from workers from those sectors? But we're not there yet.
And if companies just, let's say, pause early hiring, entry-level hiring, what is the long-term impact of that on regions like the Bay Area?
So I think there are two ways to think about that impact. One of them is on the people themselves who would have gotten those jobs and who don't. Whenever there's a recession or a downturn, companies slow down their entry-level hiring. And the workers who are entering the labor market then, it's not good for them. They not only don't get their first job, but they then when they do get a first job, it tends to be not as good. It doesn't have as much training built into it. They're not as well set up to climb the ladder to the next job and the job after that. And so you can see that it has long-term impact on them. So it's, obviously we want a strong labor market where people do get pulled into good jobs, and it's good for the people. The other way to look at it is from the company's perspectives. AI, at this point, to the extent that it's filling in for roles is filling in for entry-level roles. And so companies may be tempted to reduce their hiring of entry-level workers. Again, I think it's early to see that in the data, but I think it's likely to be happening. The challenge is we're going to need more experienced workers who know how to make sense of the results, not fewer with the result of this. And you don't get experienced workers unless you start with inexperienced workers and give them experience. And so I think the risk is that companies cut back on their investments in early workers, and then they're going to be looking to try to find those experienced workers down the road, and they're not going to be there because nobody invested in them.
So Mike, turn to you at Cloudflare. How's this conversation actually happening? Yeah.
Hello.
All right.
Sorry.
How is this conversation actually happening at Cloudflare? Like balancing the short-term benefits of efficiency with the long-term risk of not hiring those, hire to retire employees.
So there's this word that got invented over the course of the past 30 years called transformation. Paul will know who's in IT that knows of transformation. It's like the T word, right? It's a 4-letter word, even though it's a lot longer than that. It's really, really hard. Transformation happens when a process evolves organically over time, and then you have to fix it. That's the best layman's terms I could put it in. It evolved organically over time, and then you later on decide to fix it, and you try to fix it by reinventing the process. It's like we're going to strip it down to its bolts and figure out like how do we do this if we did it from scratch. Artificial intelligence allows us to do that a lot faster, but the mindset has to be not what do I think it can do, but what might it do. And I think about this with my kids. My son had gotten, he plugged our Nintendo Switch into something, and I was convinced this would never work, and it did. And I was so convinced that it wouldn't work that I wouldn't even try it. And of course my son is just like, click, oh look Dad, it worked. That's why youth is really important, because the perspective is really important. As we age, we start to think more about why things won't work instead of what might be possible. So youth is still really important. I get frustrated also with the idea that this somehow eliminates entry-level jobs. I think fear eliminates entry-level jobs. I don't think it's economics that eliminates entry-level jobs. I think it's fear that eliminates entry-level jobs. But that's the wrong approach. It's a paralysis approach. But you're saying that if we just stand still, nothing bad will happen to us, and that's not what disruption says. Disruption says standing still is the worst thing you could possibly do.
And Ron, from your perspective, as somebody who works in philanthropy, how do you see the career pathway design changing to ensure that there are those entry-level pathways?
I love that point on fear. I think it's something that's. There's two things I say to teams and industries when people are having a conversation. They ask me, what is going on right now in the system? What is everyone thinking in the field? What's the education system doing right now? I said, well, one, they're afraid. But the biggest issue is time. You cannot wait in the system right now to make decisions down the road, because young people already have skills that you have to enhance. So think about it from the side of the company. The company is, everything's about bottom line. Let's just recognize that, let's be honest. They have to make the dollar tomorrow. They can't wait and then have it in the future. But if they can bring in young people with skills already and just retool them, it allows them to maybe double down on their efforts. But that means you have to not be afraid to provide access to young people who you might not traditionally bring in for employment. You might say, always want to hire someone with a degree. Maybe you can look besides that and say, we just want to hire a young person who wants to grow. We want to hire someone with 5 years work experience. Maybe we change that philosophy and hire someone with 2. We want to hire someone who has interned with us. Great, we have a program that you're bringing internships into your program. But you have to, at the company level, this is a CEO thing. I heard something great today. This is a CEO change for one of the first times ever in life. It used to be like you have a product, and the product changed the world. This is the first time the CEO at the highest level has to trickle it down. So because of that, you're changing mentality. You're erasing what historically has made people great in some cases. A lot of CEOs are great because, yeah, they took risks, but they now understand the program, they drive that program, they do it a certain way, it makes money. That's what makes them great in many cases. How do you have them change that mentality? Change those conversations, become different? And I do believe as you're changing these conversations at the CEO level, it has to trickle down to all the employees. And the young employees have to come in saying, I'm willing to adjust and adapt and change with you. I'm going to bring skills you've never seen. I'm going to be willing to learn in different ways. And I'm going to want to compete with those people who've had jobs 5 or 10 years. And I do think that's something, I'm a big believer in competition. I believe that it's the foundational piece that all plays shouldn't just be given. So how do you say you want to compete? How do you have that conversation at that job level? How are you saying my skills, my talent, my ability is just as valuable and just as skilled as someone who's been on the job for 5 or 10 years? And that's the challenge. I do believe that starts in the education system. I believe that starts at the schools, the nonprofits, having those conversations that are past, we're going to give you the skill for a job. And if we can start that at the 16, 17, 8-year-old age, by the time they're 19 and 20, they'll have experiences that prepare them for the workforce like any other person who's maybe been in the workforce 10 years.
And speaking of that adaptation, Jesse, do you see the widening gap of those employees that can adapt well to the changing technologies as inevitable?
So I think it's been true for, sorry, turn it off for a second. Maybe you can turn yours off while I'm okay. Do it? Sorry. It's been true for at least 30 years that the market was changing faster than careers were lasting. So anybody who was starting their career, whatever skills they had, were not going to be the skills they would need 10 years ago. That's been true for a long time. That may now be not 10 years, but 5 years, but it's the same basic structure. That what you need to be successful in a career is you need to be able to adapt to what's changing. And that's if you weren't able to adapt to the changes, you were going to be in real trouble in the 1990s, in the 2000s, in the 2010s, and now. I think that's always been true for my whole lifetime. That gap, how much trouble you're in, is partly a function of how we design our labor market and our institutions. I think there are things we can do to make that gap smaller, to kind of cushion people who are displaced for one way or another. But ultimately, the best way to cushion yourself is to be adaptable, to be able to learn new skills as they become necessary, because you're never going to be able to start out in school, learn the skills, and be able to carry yourself through the world.
Are there any design systems that you see work best?
So I think that the systems, it affects, I think, what you want to teach. Part of what we want to teach is not teaching specific job skills, but teaching how to work in a business environment, how to operate it, how to adapt, how to learn. But I also think that if the labor market is going to be changing faster, we need more cushions for people who get thrown off of it. There's another more routes back in. And so I think that means better unemployment insurance systems that are more flexible, better job training programs for displaced workers. I think all of that is something we've needed for a long time, but we especially need it if the labor market is going to start changing faster.
And Ron, if AI actually does eliminate some entry-level jobs, what are other avenues that you see for early career hiring?
So I think it was mentioned earlier, I'm not 100% sure they're going to eliminate. I think it's going to change what the skills are that are coming in. And I say that because there's a fear-mongering that came out when AI hit. Wipe out all the jobs, young people aren't going to have any chances. Just for a point of reference, it's a fact, there are more jobs right now that need to be filled, that can't be filled, than at any other time. A lot of times they just don't want people who want to go to those jobs, and that's a challenge. So let's start with that. I do think there are skills that can never be forgotten, that are going to be more important now in the AI age than ever. Communication, collaboration, and alignment with teams, the ability to express your ideas, to be able to be an individual and learn, while at the same time understand how to work and build a product, to be more critical, because everyone's going to start assuming that AI can do it for them. And I do feel like you're going to have many individuals bring down the opportunity and just think it's going to be built for them. That's a learning tool. I think the advantage for entry-level jobs and for young people is they're going to come in with that fire, not having to learn the technology, and the ability and skill to say, I'm willing to adapt, I'll change, I don't need to learn the technology. Give me the information that you want me to build upon. I can take my knowledge and ability and skill here, apply it to my willingness to work with teams and collaborate, and then build upon what you give me. And that's why entry-level jobs are so important. A lot of it's customer service, a lot of it's communication, a lot of it's building these fundamental things to help businesses grow, and that doesn't go anywhere. And I think I heard before, it used to be the back room, and it took, those back room jobs aren't gonna go anywhere. Imagine training those same team people. Don't cut it down to 5 people. Make those 10 people 10 times more powerful. So guess what? You're getting 10x outcomes that you're looking for. That's what businesses want. So those 10 people, you're not cutting down by 5 and saving money. They're giving you 10x and doubling your money, or 10 times more. So I think that's the opportunity, and it's just a mind shift that has to take place at the corporate level to make sure that happens.
And Mike, at Cloudflare specifically, how is Cloudflare approaching using AI as that accelerant, as that leveling tool for that 10x of outcomes that Ron has described?
So, and sorry for anybody that's in SaaS right now, but like this is how we're looking at it, is that if I'm buying a SaaS application that does 1,000 things I don't need, so I get 200 things I do need, I'm more likely to look at building the 200 things I do need than buying the 1,000 things that has 800 I don't need. And we're moving at a really fast clip to do that, but we're also security companies, so there's a reason why we want to keep things in our walls in a lot of cases. But I think in the IT world in particular, I think about 2 types of people that have a huge advantage right now. One of them is an engineer that can knows what code looks like, but that understands it, wants to talk to business people. That's the first value, because the vibe coding is going to do the work for you, and you get results faster. You can test it, and the better you are at describing what you need, the better that the AI is at writing code. And then the other type is somebody who's already got some business experience that's not afraid to own an outcome of a technology tool. So what we're going to see is a lot blurrier lines. I think it's the lines between technology and business that have made IT really, really hard. And I'm getting toward the end of my career now, but I'm kind of optimistic about maybe our role changes enough to where it's a lot tighter relationship. The work is more close. But again, it comes back. I love what you said about collaboration. There was this really weird thing about brilliant jerks that were successful in coding, and I think the brilliant jerk is like a dinosaur that's going to be extinct. Nobody wants the brilliant jerk because you don't need the brilliant jerk anymore. The brilliance is not worth the jerk trade-off. And so we're just going to bias towards awesome people who are flexible.
I love that answer. As somebody who's worked with a lot of brilliant jerks, I really hope they all go away. So if the Bay Area and a program like Genesis Works is designing a talent-ready, a future-ready talent pipeline across healthcare and technology and service sectors and finance and beyond, what would it need to focus upon to withstand that next couple of, I think decade of disruption, but with the pace of things as you're describing, Mike, the next 6 months of disruption, and then 6 months after that as things continue changing. And this is for all of you.
Yeah, I just want to say that I already live in a time machine, because whenever I travel to other parts of the world, I get to see what technology was 10 plus years ago. And so I live on the bleeding edge here in the Bay Area, which I get used to. It's almost like you're running on a treadmill and somehow you've learned to run really, really fast. And then you go to a different gym and you're like, whoa, this treadmill is slow. But then you also see people using the treadmill and you're like, oh yeah, but there's things I liked about that. And you remember that there was relevance, right? And so I think that pacing is really interesting. I live in a time machine, but we have to remember that the adoption curve of how long it takes for technology to truly permeate entire industries is slow, like you were saying. It's really slow, it's decades. It's taken since the 70s for technology to get where it is today. The first people I ever worked with in my career didn't have a computer at home. The only experience they had with a computer was at work, and I had to teach them email. And email replaced something. Did you know that? I bet you didn't know that email replaced something. We used to have these rooms called mail rooms, and if you wanted to send a message to the whole company, you would go and type something and print it, and then you would make photocopies, and you would put them in everybody's box. And that's what email replaced, and we forget that because it's everywhere now. It's on us, it's on my watch, it's in my phone, it's everywhere. But that wasn't that long ago. It really wasn't, and it's still brand new to some folks. So the technology curve is kind of weird.
Doctors are still faxing.
think I'm older than Mike. I remember when offices had telephone operators.
Oh, totally. Oh my gosh, wow.
But yes,
You got me beat, man.
I mean, there have always been technological changes, and some jobs have gone away and others have come. Again, I think what more rapid change calls for is more general skills. The communication and collaboration is a big piece of it, but I think it also makes K-12 education more important. Just the basics of reading, basic math, how to think, how to understand how things that happen in history. I think all of that becomes more important, not less, when the technical stuff can be done for you. You still need to know what you're looking for, and the kind of wisdom to know what you're looking for is what I think the education system needs to focus on more, rather than how to actually implement it. Just like my kids get frustrated, they still have to do a little bit of long division, but much less than I did, because they've got calculators, right? The AI is going to be a new calculator. We'll spend less time teaching kids to do things that it can do, but you can use that skill. That skill was then designed to support something bigger, and you still need to be able to do the bigger thing to be able to use the AI. My experience thus far, I'm curious whether others have this, is it's really hard to use it effectively if you don't know how to do it yourself and know what you're looking for.
Or if you don't know what you want.
Yes.
Like it still started. There's a meme that went around that said that, like, as long as people have to know what they want, we're good.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing I'll add to finish out the point, this is, I guess, around fear also, but it's really, people have to understand, it's not AI telling humans what to do. It's AI and humans working together, and we have to change how we think about that, because everyone is saying AI is going to tell you what to do, and you're not going to ask the right questions, and you're not going to have the skills to tell it, so it's just going to guide you. And the people who will be successful will be the ones guiding the AI. That's why young people have such an advantage. They're not afraid of that. And so I do think as the skills are coming developed, as the jobs are being created to, employ these new skills, as the things are being shown and adapted and, and really become part of everyday life, it's going to be critical that humans and the AI are together. And that's those skills of asking questions and those skills of really drawing inferences. I mean, these are former elementary teacher, principal, and all this other stuff. The skills of drawing inferences and summarizing, and it's those things that are fundamental to a third grader are going to be critical when working with AI. Asking a question. Do you know when kids learn how to ask questions? Kindergarten. Can I have something to eat? And if you ask the wrong question of AI, you get the wrong answer. If you ask a good question of AI, it fundamentally drives you the direction you want to go, not where it wants to take you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the panelists' time, and I just want to say thank you so much to Jesse, Ron, and Mike. I think that one thing that's really clear on this conversation is that the strongest companies in the regions are the ones who are able to adapt and invest early and intentionally in this future pipeline of students, and also just redesigning our education in a way that makes the brilliant jerks not land among our employees, and so we can work collaboratively and communicate best. So to close this out, I want to invite Nada Perone up, who's the Executive Director of Genesis Works Bay Area, to speak more about what Genesis Works Bay Area is doing.
Good evening, everyone. It's great to see you here and listening, and thank you, Katherine, for moderating. Thank you to this incredible panel. It's such a relevant topic right now, and one that we're all trying to figure out together. And I'm throwing my remarks out the window because what you said, I think, was really meaningful. This idea of collaboration, and that's what we teach our kids at Genesis Works. Those students come in and they're fearful, right? And they're unsure of themselves, and they come into our program and they get 8 weeks of summer training, and what we teach them is those soft skills that were mentioned up here. It's collaboration, it's communication, it's how do you sit in a boardroom and have a mature conversation, and those skills then develop through a 10-month internship that we provide them, and it's through these partners that we have up here and through partners that we have sitting out in the audience that provide these opportunities to our interns. And from there, it's a trajectory that they see that they didn't have before. And so we're incredibly grateful for our Genesis Work partners. I'm going to be bold and say I've been here 10 months, and my goal is to double our internship numbers in the coming year. I didn't know coming into this organization how impactful the work is, and I know now, and I'm incredibly dedicated to make that happen and serve every qualified student. That's something that Byron has said out loud many times, and I'll keep reiterating it. There's more and more students that are looking for a home, and it really kind of transforms the way that they see their lives, and then it's generational change from there on. And I think the Bay Area community deserves it. We're a place of innovation. We're a place of just motivation, and we should give that back to those that don't have access integrally into their lives. So I hope you partner with us and be one with us from a philanthropy standpoint, from a seat standpoint. We're looking to open doors into new industries, life sciences, financial services, places that we haven't historically placed our students. And I think it'll be really exciting to see where Genesis Works goes from here with those mission and goals in mind. But I don't want to talk in theory. I want to bring up Michelle, who is an alum of ours. And you saw how many hands were raised when Byron asked for our alums to acknowledge. And I hope you had a chance to speak with them, because I spoke with some that I haven't spoken with before, and I'm even more inspired. There's one that went interned at Salesforce and continues to work at Salesforce. I mean, that is incredible. And so I want to bring Michelle up here, and she can tell. I'm going to ask her a couple questions. So, why don't you come forward?
Oh, we move. We go.
Oh, no, please don't.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Okay, so with Michelle, she's an GWBA, a Genesis Works Bay Area alum, and now a member of our national board, because she is that impressive. So I'm going to give her the microphone and let her tell her a little bit about herself.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you all for being here. My name is Michelle Villarreal. I am a Genesis Works alum, class of 2015. Participated in the second Bay Area cohort here. And I attended Skyline High School. And went to San Francisco State, studied information systems. And my career really started because of a Genesis Works internship. And now I'm sitting on the national board. I've been there for almost 2 years, and I'm really excited to be here and talk a little bit more about this program.
Okay, so first question. You heard a lot tonight about the future of work. From your perspective, what's one takeaway from this conversation that resonates with your own personal experience?
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah, okay. I think one of the things that really stood out to me, and kind of mentioned this, is the soft skills that Genesis Works really does provide to the students. In the conversations of AI, I mean, it was all mentioned here how we can't resist it, we have to collaborate with it, we have to work with it, and in order for us to have those skill sets, we have to get them somewhere. And I think for people who are the first in their families to navigate these spaces and navigate college education, we don't have access to those resources at home. We don't know who to ask. And so for a program like Genesis Works, I think that's the biggest takeaway outside from the technical training that we get is the soft skills, learning how to articulate your thoughts, learning how to ask the right questions, learning how to collaborate with people. That's really important, and that's something that Genesis Works teaches you. I often, on social media, you see all these videos of people who are interviewing and they have the AI sort of telling them what to do and they're reading from a prompt, right? And Genesis Works students are not doing that. Like, we're not, because we're being shown how to articulate and how to tell our stories. And I think that's one of the things that is really important that often doesn't really get much thought of credit. It's just those soft skills that are going to be necessary when we do get to the workforce. Here's how the program.
Thank you very much for that. And how did having early access to real workplace change how you saw your future?
That's a big question, and it's also layered. I think for me specifically, it definitely broadened my purview of what a career looks like and what it can look like for me. I am the first in my family to navigate college. I'm the first in my family to step in a corporate space. The idea of a career was not something that was spoken in my family because nobody in my family worked in corporate America. I didn't know what it was, right? And so I think it really shifted my perspective of what type of careers are out there, and that I could also pursue those careers, especially in technology. And I think that's especially important in a place like the Bay Area, right? I was born and raised in Oakland, and as an Oakland student, we're so close to all of these opportunities in technology geographically, but the resources are not there for us to actually get these opportunities. And so a program like Genesis Works, it opened that door for me and showed me, hey, like, you can pursue a career in tech, you can be successful, you do have the skills, and we're gonna give you the extra toolkits that you need to make sure that you are successful in those careers. And it led into a career in technology now and everything that I'm doing, and it's a really big reason why I'm still so heavily involved in the program, because it did so much for me. It continues to do a lot for people. I mean, I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to our alum, but there's so many amazing students here that have amazing stories to tell, and it just goes to show how valuable the program is and how powerful it is to give a young person with grit and with the willingness to learn and the eagerness to learn an opportunity to really take those skills and change the possibilities that they see career-wise.
It's wonderful. I think that Michelle just said it beautifully. We are in a resource-rich community and environment, and it's all about access and providing that opportunity to thrive. And we've seen it over and over again. The return on investment of a part-time Genesis Works intern sometimes outdoes a full-time employee on their staff, because they just are willing to hit the ground running and do things that others aren't willing to do. And we train them with soft skills but technical skills as well. And I'm happy to share more about our program. We also support in college and career counseling, so it's a really a wraparound service. And I'm really proud of the work that we do, the outcomes that we have. I don't think you can match it anywhere else. So I hope that you come and learn more about Genesis Works and partner with us in important and deep ways. And I will say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shonda. Thank you so much, Michelle. I would love to take the last couple minutes that we have and open up any questions that you have for our panelists, our CEO, our executive director, our alumni. Any questions?
This question really goes out to the panel, specifically around the notion of soft skills. So we talked a lot about communications, collaboration. What I'm trying to understand is with the workforce and a lot of the companies in the Bay Area as well as around the country that have focused more around remote work, what can we talk about relative to training and or suggestions to the team, to the youth, in which how they would basically handle those types of skill sets that are required? Because I think that the preference, if I'm not mistaken, is that the younger generation would prefer to work remotely. But in the world of building skill sets, there's a lot of that interaction that has to occur over video and others that I think is equally important.
Great question. One, I think adults struggle with the soft skills virtually, so I want to name that, just not put on you. But in that question embedded is what you just heard and why Genesis Works is so critical. Again, not just put a publication out for you guys, it's free service. That opportunity, so some young people just at home in life, they get the skill. Their family does it, they just understand that interaction. They might even go to a school that they practice that, International Baccalaureate School or whatever. That's what they do. If not, then programs that can provide them that opportunity at a younger age is really what business wants. What business doesn't, and please, disagree with me, let me know. Businesses don't want the kids to come in, or young people, and have to train them up on it. They want you to come in ready to run. And that's where the fear comes in of letting an 18 or 19-year-old in. They're like, this 28-year-old has to know how to interact in a group. They have to know how to communicate and talk. That's not always necessarily true, but that's a belief structure. So how can we get the skills at a younger age? Because when we talk to organizations around and employers, first thing they say is, I just want the young people to come in with the skills early. I can maybe adapt, but if I don't have the skills early, I'm not gonna keep adapting. So give me a 25-year-old or a 29-year-old in their second job, because the 18-year-old, I can't train them to do the job and the skills. So I do believe it validates the need for programs. It shows how young people who are eager, because communication is not the problem. Communication in a different setting is where it becomes a challenge. And this is where the mentality of the corporate world has to change. Everybody doesn't communicate the same, especially if you're working across different countries and we're on different demographics. It's this weird world we live in where everyone believes everyone should look, sound, walk, talk the same. That's just not the case. So how do we adapt, have an understanding, and then again, how are these skills getting taught at a younger age?
I'll say something too. Yep. I've also, just to add on to that, I've had the pleasure of interviewing candidates for the program, so students before they go in, and then do mock job interviews with them after they've been through the program, and the transformation is mind-blowing. So on the interviewing for the program side, you have a kid exactly what you would expect from a kid their age. They're on a video call. Of course, video is pretty natural for them, but they're kind of like, they're a little bit scripted. It's very sort of rehearsed. You can tell they're nervous, etc. That second one where they've gone through the program, it's like they've found this part of themselves that they believe in that gives them the confidence to show up in the best way they can. And that transformation it's a short period. It's not a long time that takes to do. So I think there's a lot that companies can learn from this program, quite frankly.
So I've actually been worried, all the worries people are having about AI, I've been worrying about to some extent for the shift to remote work and generally the shift to kind of interacting with people through devices. That the kind of ability to work with people who are different from you, to communicate with them, that's really important, and that's something you need to learn early in your career, and I think it's much harder to do when you're interacting with people over Zoom. And so I'm worried about that as kind of the impediment to people kind of getting into careers, much more than I am about AI at this point. I just think it's a set of skills that people really need to develop, and you see this pattern that younger workers are the ones who most want to work remotely, but they're also the ones who suffer the most in terms of their career development from it. And I think that's a worrisome pattern, and it's something that we need programs like Genesis Works to try to help people through into the actual in-person workforce.
Well, and I also think that the social skills that you develop are so meaningful when you're face to face at times. And a lot of these companies are starting to lose that with the newer generation, newer workers that are coming in, right? They're not able to make those relationships that are important, right? And I think that's something that is really important.
Right. Early career workers don't get as much mentoring when they're working remotely, and that's a real problem.
Thank you, first of all, for the discussion. Points resonated tremendously. One of the thoughts I kept coming back to as I was listening to you guys is this thought of synergy. So, of course, all the young folks will benefit from getting the internships and contribute to the company and learn. But is there an opportunity also to highlight a little bit more what the older or more experienced employees in those companies will learn from that? Because I think that's where really the magic happens when you bring AI natives straight out of school into an organization and marry them up with the more experienced folks that may have those social skills, that may have the business language like we were talking about. And 1 + 1 is more than 2 in that case. So how can that come out of one program and how it's positioned?
I'll go. Good to see you, Andreas. And he's here, but I know him, so like, no, thanks for asking the question. I plan you or no. There's a really interesting thing that I've learned in my life, which is that you can tell how well somebody knows something by how well they can teach it. And what I've noticed with my staff is that when I have interns on site, they always find themselves later reflecting and saying, I know it better because I had an intern. I know my job better because I had somebody to show it to. And I'll tell you one other little nugget of a story here. There was this process I was trying to transform. Everybody remember that word? It's a 4-letter word with a bunch more. Anyway, transformation is hard. And there was this flow chart I was going through one time, and it had a diamond on it, and it's a flow for yes or no, and Danny was in the thing. And I was like, shouldn't be somebody's name in a diamond. Like, that's the wrong way to use a flow chart. So I was like, Danny doesn't make a yes or no decision. Danny's here before I get to work in the morning. Danny's here after I leave at the end of the day. There's no way he makes a yes or no decision. That might be the outcome, that's not a decision. So I sent someone to watch him for 2 days. They watched him work, and he came back, he's like, Mike, this guy makes 90 decisions, easily. Like, I cataloged all the ones I could catch. People forget their job. And when you have to teach somebody else your job, you remember in a better way. It becomes more solid. And so, like, there's a huge win to, like, let me show you how to do this. And then I think the youth brings to this thing of, like, I don't know, you showed me that, and then I asked AI this thing, and, like, look, we did something else. So it's back to that Nintendo Switch hookup thing, where it's like, I was coming up with all the reasons why we couldn't do that, and my son was just like, just plug it in, Dad.
I guess the last thing I want to add to that, it really hits the heart of mentoring. And I think about mentorship, apprenticeship, internship, I think about all those things. And I heard the term reverse mentor. I said, what's a reverse mentor? I'm like, well, the Gen Z is mentoring Gen X, I think that's what I'm in. And I'm like, wow, that is so important. It's fundamental. Then I think about, I'm asking my son, my oldest son who's 28, all these questions and all these things. And he's like, your dad is real simple. And I'm like, wow, it rolls off so simple to him. And that's being a mentor. But I will go back to a simple thing we started with. Adults have to get over their fear of listening to someone who's younger than them, because we don't know everything. And if you're just stuck in your ways, I'm gonna do this, I know this, especially if you've been in your career and are successful, it's very hard to be like, oh no. You know, I love that point of, if they're great teachers, they're going to want to teach. They're gonna want to provide that exposure, and that's mentoring. That really is. And that mentoring piece is going to be even more critical as they try to align and move forward in the systems that are coming forward in the future of work.
Any other questions? Thank you, everybody, for coming. That wraps up our program for the evening. We are so grateful to have you here. On your way out, I wanted to point out a couple of people to say hi to. We have 2 of our alumni in the room who are also featured in your program. So say hi to Sharad and hi to RJ in the back. If you have any questions about their story, talk to them on your way out. Please stop by Sarah. You can raise your hand. She has validation for parking, so if you with you, she will be able to give you a discount. Otherwise, we have some food in boxes as well back in the cocktail area, so please take some dumplings home. And that is the end of our event. Thank you for coming. And one more big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful night. Oh, actually, I want to say one more thing to you. If you're ready to get involved with Genesis Works Bay Area, on the second page of your program is a QR code where you can designate how you would like to get involved. I'll send you an email tomorrow.